My area of interest throughout this semester has been one of the only social issues that can be considered truly universal: wealth inequality. That universality makes wealth inequality instantly recognizable to just about anybody, but it also presents a daunting challenge when it comes to understanding an issue so large and multifaceted. This is why I ultimately decided to keep the scope of my questions broad for the sake of simplicity. My first question asked the participants to pick which social issue was most important to them out of a list consisting of wealth inequality, education, racial inequality, and gender inequality, with a second question which asked them why their chosen issue was such a big problem. I conducted my poll on the social media website reddit.com and received 12 responses. Of those, 50% chose wealth inequality as their number one concern. This surprised me, as I honestly expected nearly every response to choose wealth inequality. The fact that so many lean towards other social issues, especially gender inequality, took me off guard. The respondents who did choose wealth inequality offered analyses of the problem ranging from wealth inequality offends our natural sense of fairness to money is speech, therefore wealth inequality is damaging to democracy. It was difficult to get people interested in responding to my survey, and I received a lot fewer responses than I imagined I might. I also found it frustrating that the scope of this assignment required me to limit my questions to the superficial and vague. I would have liked to gather some more demographic information about the respondents, particularly in regards to their income and general economic status, to help explain the underlying factors informing their answers. I think they would have been willing to give me that information too. Pretty much everybody who responded to my survey made a point of complimenting the survey itself and encouraging me to continue in my research. I think my answers fell in line with my general conception about the importance and underlying causes of wealth inequality. However, they did raise further questions as to the efficacy of any of the proposed solutions and what biases may be informing the opinions of the people responding to my survey. I think my favorite response came from one of my respondents who had periods of wealth and poverty and was able to look at the issue from both sides of the spectrum. He seemed to think that extreme wealth and extreme poverty were both bad because of the way that they isolated members of their community from each other and from the community as a whole. He believed that that made both groups significantly less productive. He also compared the way that our society facilitates people yo-yoing between extreme poverty and extreme wealth as a sign of its dysfunction, comparing the fates of pro athletes and lottery winners whose large savings of wealth can be depleted with a single bad choice as an example of how social mobility works both ways, and the restrictive and volatile way that our existing system forces it to happen is potentially dangerous for the majority of people in our society. I think the way my respondents seem to classify themselves as part of the class affected by wealth inequality, and how the majority of their solutions involved an involuntary redistribution of the wealth held by the extravagantly wealthy, seems to connect my findings to the conflict perspective of sociology. The people who responded to my survey think of the wealthy as an adversarial group that they are suffering under. They see wealth inequality not as a mutation of our economic structure or a failure of some social policy, but as a deliberate attempt by the highest strata of society to accumulate wealth and deny significant social advancement to the lower classes, perfectly mirroring the Marxian conflict theory presented in the textbook. If I had the time, I think I would have liked to have conducted this survey for a much longer period of time and across a much wider range of social media websites. It seems to me that limiting myself to just one section of one website, reddit.com, is effectively limiting the demographic types that will respond to my survey and the types of solutions and analysis that I will get from them. By expanding the survey to other websites with potentially broader user bases, or at least different ones, the potential to receive data that is distinctive from what I did receive will be greatly increased. I also think it's more likely that I would receive answers that are more interesting and offer different ideas on how to solve these problems, because just by probability, the more people you have answering a survey, the more likely you are to get a respondent who looks at the questions in a unique way. For that reason, I would have liked to have conducted this survey across every possible social media platform for at least a couple of months. Although I shudder to think about all of the responses I would have had to read through in that case. In general, the findings of my rigorous scientific study can be summed up thusly: wealth inequality is bad, and people don't like it.